Who? Hey race fans, welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to Drafting the Circuits. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we discuss everything racing from the past week. Before we do that, let me introduce you to the panel I have assembled for you tonight. With me, Mr. Richard Youden, race engineer, and Seth Eggert, the NASCAR correspondent over at Motorsports Tribune. Our good friend Gray Warren is off on assignment, taking care of some business. But gentlemen, how are you both tonight?
Doing good.
All right, great to have you on. Now, we've got a guest with us in the studio tonight. I have Jarett Andretti, who's running the Pirelli World Cup TCR class this year, as well as continuing the USAC midgets, or USAC sprints, rather, winged and wingless. Jarett's a busy guy. Jarett is the son of John Andretti, the grandson of Aldo Andretti. So there's a lot of good short track pedigree right there. Also, his granduncle is Mario Andretti's cousin is Marco, uncle is Michael Andretti. So on top of that, your dad's godson is AJ Foyt, and one of your dad's good buddies is Richard Petty. So I guess it's just natural that you ended up racing cars. And Jarett, good to have you on the show. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I appreciate you guys having the first panel discussion I guess I'll have ever had, especially on a radio show. So I look forward to it. Something new.
All right, great. So now you've been racing in USAC for roughly 6 years. Is that correct?
I started racing in USAC mainly in 2014. So I mean that's probably 3 or 4 years, something like that. I'm starting to get a little bit older now. I know how that goes. I'm losing track of time.
Yeah, so, but now you've joined the David Tilton team along with Copeland Motorsports in the Pirelli World Cup. It's a new class, the TCR class, 2.0-liter turbocharged modified touring cars. You're running a Volkswagen GTI, which, when I was in college, I had a Volkswagen GTI, and it was one of the most incredible cars I've ever had. But so you've run at COTA, you've run at Virginia. You've got Lime Rock coming up on Memorial Day weekend. So, with that being said, how difficult is it to switch gears from the dirt short ovals to these little fast and furious cars, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, it's just totally different. I mean, I gotta tell everybody, I go from the normal running 60 races or so with the sprint car on dirt ovals with a rear-wheel drive car, and then I go to the TCR races and run the Volkswagen and a front-wheel drive, pavement, and road course. So, I mean, you couldn't get it any further. There's no similarity as far as that goes from, as far as the eye can, just on the surface. There are some, some things you can learn, especially in the rain, running from, the dirt stuff to the pavement stuff. But it's really a totally new experience for me. There's no data on the sprint car. And I've never worked with an engineer on the sprint car, but now I'm working with an engineer and data and, just taking all that in as well. There's so much more information available to you that's not available to you on the sprint car side of things, And I still take some of the things that I've learned in the sprint cars as far as watching the track, watching what other people are doing. I go and look at other corners, because that's what you do in the short track stuff to see what other people are doing. And so I take some of what I do on the short track and apply it to the courses, and I think it helps.
So now these the touring car races, they're relatively short in length. You guys run like double headers. They're less than an hour apiece. Mm-hmm. And how quick is the turnaround on the double headers? Is it one Saturday, one Sunday, or are you guys running twice in one day?
Typically one Saturday, one Sunday. When you go to Lime Rock, though, it's going to be 2 races in one day, so it's going to be pretty hectic that day. It's a 2-race deal. You practice, qualify on a Friday, and you race on a Saturday, and then I go home. And it's funny because actually I'm going to race at Terre Haute on that Wednesday, fly to Lime Rock on Thursday, practice, qualify Friday, race Saturday, fly back home Saturday night, and race Kokomo Sunday. So I'm going to do I have a PWC weekend booking by a couple sprint car races. So it should be a good time.
Well, you're probably the right guy to do it. After all, your dad's the guy that invented the double duty at Indy.
Yeah.
Flying back and forth from tracks. So I just want to touch on your dad for a second. John Andretti, really respected guy in motorsports, very versatile driver in his career, and you're kind of following, by doing some different things there. But there was a health scare. He had stage 3 cancer. He come up with the hashtag Check It for Andretti, encouraging man close to 50 to go ahead and get an exam. So, but how's your dad doing now? We talked about a little bit off the air, but just want to elaborate. Just want to kind of fill in the blanks for our listeners that are kind of concerned about John.
No, absolutely, and he's doing well. His first scan right after chemo was clear, and then his 3-month checkup was clear as well. And as if people go through this, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that have had family members go through this, but you're never really safe. But the 5-year mark is really the goal, and so that's kind of what you look toward and work towards. So you just take it 3 months at a time, and you hope and pray, and just keep chugging along. He doesn't slow down at all. He didn't slow down when he was on chemo. I mean, I think he missed probably, I would say, 10 races last year, and he had surgery one day on a Tuesday and was racing with me on a Friday, and he had surgery in North Carolina, flew to Indiana, and was racing with me on Friday and Saturday, and then he would go to chemo and still go to the races with me and go to the car wash and maintenance and everything. So he doesn't let him slow him down at all. So which is cool, and so he's doing well right now, and we're just going to hope it keeps trending that direction.
Absolutely, yeah. So now you've got coming up on your schedule. Now we talked about you were going to do some wing racing in Ohio, but you said that fell through.
Yeah, unfortunately I had somebody that was going to Joe Devon that was builds the cars. He called me and unfortunately had to cancel helping us out on Saturday, and our team is relatively, it was very inexperienced with a wing car. We've never run one. And so I wanted to make sure that I had all the proper pieces in place before I took out a brand new race car and went out there and debuted it with a rookie driver as far as the wing stuff goes. So we're going to go to Hopstad this weekend. We're going to run the non-wing car and the wing car on Saturday and kind of go have some fun and see where it takes us. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be something totally different again, and I think just jumping in all these different disciplines of racing is only going to be better for me. It's only going to be good for me and help me get better in the other disciplines as well.
So, what are some of your longer-term career goals? Because now you started racing relatively late compared to.
Right.
I believe I'd read you were 17 when you started racing, and you were.
Yeah.
And then you were flying, going back and forth from the racetrack as you attended college.
Yeah.
And you went to NC State or UNC?
NC State.
NC State,
yeah,
right, where you got your degree. So there's guys 19 years old looking at cup rides. So you're at 25, 25 now. But what are you? I mean, what are your long-term goals? Are you looking to get into a top-tier series at one point in time, whether it be in stock cars or sports cars or even perhaps Indy cars?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously that's always the goal. I think you just, as I said, there's people that are, back in the day, it wasn't uncommon to be 30 years old making your Cup debut, and now it's, you need to be 19 or 20, and otherwise you're too old. So it's just funny how those different trends go. But I'd like to, and I'm not picky. I'm just doing it. As the phone rings, you pick it up, and if you can fit something into your schedule, you go and race it. So that's kind of the mentality I've taken. That's the mentality my dad took, and obviously Mario and a lot of my other family members. So I think that there's no set career path goal. You just kind of go where it takes you. I think that I would like to do, I always tell people I like to do rallying. I think rallying looks really cool, looks interesting. It's something that I don't think anybody in our family's done. So that would be kind of interesting to get to do. Drag racing, Dad's done some drag racing, dabbled in that a little bit. He said he always talks about that experience fondly. So I think there's, you never know where you might end up. I think you just keep your eyes and ears open and just keep working and kind of see what happens.
Now, you did a couple of years ago run the Rolex 24, did you not?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So, what was that experience like? I mean, you're talking that's you're used to the really short sprint races on the short tracks. Now you're doing a couple hour long stint.
Well, it was really cool because I got to do it with my father, and that was fun. And I had a couple really cool teammates with Anders Krohn and Taylor Hackard, and we had a good time. It was unfortunately we blew up about 12 hours in, but those are kind of doing that race is kind of we had a gearbox issue early in the race, and we went 20 or so laps down on the first stint because they were trying to fix the gearbox. So we went out there and we're running laps, and it was just it's a surreal experience when you look up and you're doing a stint at 3 a.m. and you look up in the stands and you see families under blankets watching you race, or you go through and you see the Ferris wheel and all just the cool thing that happened with a 24-hour race like that, and especially going around Daytona. So it was a really awesome experience. I really can't say enough about it, and it was funny because my mom and my sisters were in the motorhome, and they would, okay, you got to wake up, you got to go run, and get me back in the motorhome, put to bed, and then wake my dad up, get him out, and so it was a family effort for sure that trip, and it was something I look back fondly on.
Yeah, that's got to be an amazing experience. It's even just, Seth and I have been just to watch the race, and just you have to watch it in stages too. I can't imagine the bouncing back and forth, in the car and whatnot. So, but now you're running with David Tilton, who's military to motorsports, and he's also associated with your uncle's team on Alexander Rossi's car. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of hooked up with David Tilton and Copeland, going from running USACs to doing this Pirelli thing.
Well, I was in the shop one morning and working on my sprint cars, and that's what we do every day. And David just wandered into my bay, and we have a little bay in the back corner, and he was just looking around the shop, and he was talking to me, and I, like I mentioned you guys off the air, I talk to everybody that comes into our bay. I mean, there's everything from schools of kids to CEOs to fans to, you never know who walks in and out of your bay. And so you talk to everybody, and you show them your race cars and explain to them your race cars, and if they're small enough, let them sit in them. And I was talking to David, and I was telling him how I like to go sports car racing. Like, I do some other stuff. I really wanted to go road racing. And he goes, well, as a matter of fact, I have a sports car team. Why don't you go look at the car? And that was right around this PRI show, and they had the Audi RS3 TCR car out there. And he goes, I'm going to be importing the Volkswagens. They're the exact same car with a hatch on them. And if you want to run one, let me know. And so I went and looked at the car. They're beautiful race cars, and they're purpose built. And the interesting thing is they're purpose-built race cars, but they're 65% of the parts are actually the same parts that are on the GTI that's on the road. So they did a great job making the race car, look like the street car. Actually, I was tell a story. I was driving behind the GTI on the street a couple weeks ago, and it was like I was racing because it looked exactly the same as all the other GTIs out there. So but anyway, so we kind of got hooked up with that, and we tested before Christmas, a couple, like 3 or 4 days before Christmas, and then we started racing, went down to Dakota and started racing. So it was kind of happened just by happenstance, really. It wasn't anything planned out or anything else. So
now it seems like just like you've had 2 races under your belt, right? One at Dakota, one at Virginia. But it looks like the Honda's got a pretty good car with Brian Hurta's team.
Yeah, the Hyundai and with Brian, and then the Honda with Brian Eversley. Yeah.
Yeah. So what have your results been like, and what are you looking to maybe do differently when you get to like Lime Rock, Portland, and Utah?
Well, the first race weekend we had a bit of an issue. We actually made some contact with the guy the first race, and it ended up knocking the radiator out of it, blowing the motor. And then the second race, there was some sort of machining problem on the vacuum connector, and we weren't getting full power. So we actually didn't finish a race down in Coda. Went to VIR and had an issue the first race. Had to go through had to go through a drive-through penalty, and then the second race we finished, and we had some speed early, but we just struggled to kind of get the and we hadn't done a full race, so I don't think we had quite knew exactly where the track was going to go. It really took a lot of rubber as far as it got significantly blacker throughout the race, and it was just something I wasn't expecting. Those Pirellis are pretty soft, and so it's just something that I think we hadn't accounted for. So, I think that a lot of it's just getting the experience to know what we need to do with the car for the races, and kind of where that leads us, and kind of what to do with my driving as far as to get the most out of it during those races. So I think that it's all a learning experience for me, and like I said, working with the engineer and all the other things, what I need to demand out of a car to get quicker and things like that. I mean, that's all stuff that you learn in the sprint cars, and I know the field to go to, and kind of we're working through that as far as the TCR stuff. So I'm just looking to finish all the races, many laps as we can, and hopefully we can get some good results.
Okay, now Seth, I want to bring you into the conversation. You've got a question or two for Jarett?
Yeah, I have two. Jarett, you said that you would run just about anything. Is there one particular track you would want to run at?
That I would want to run at?
Yeah.
That's a difficult question. I mean, I think that we're going to get to go to Knoxville later this year with the sprint car, which is going to be really cool. Sprint car, they call it the Sprint Car Capital of the World. I'd really like to go there. I got to run Reams Grove last year, which was really, which has had a lot of history. As far as a road course, that's a difficult question. I got to go to Dakota, which was, I got to go to a Formula One track, did Daytona. I think that it would have to be somewhere in Europe, maybe Spa, maybe Monza, Monte Carlo. It's just one of those places that would be really cool. I just don't know. I don't have maybe a specific one circled, but I think any of those three tracks, one of those historic road courses, or a street course over in Europe would be something that I'd like to cross off my bucket list at some point.
Very understandable. And my other question is, I know you're driving for your dad sometimes now, sometimes some other owners. If you do move up to, say, IndyCar, would you want to drive for family, or do you think that would be maybe too much pressure and you would run elsewhere?
I think that I've driven for my dad a long time. We kind of built this team from being one car and one motor and a borrowed truck and trailer, and to being able to have multiple cars and motors and a truck and trailer that's ours, and we kind of built it from the scratch. We had a set of tools and kind of decided to go sprint car racing, and that's kind of how we got started. So I've done everything always with family. I think Michael's got, in my opinion, the best IndyCar team out there. I mean, he's won the 500 3 of the last 4 years. That's where you go to, winning the 500 is the ultimate pinnacle in motorsports. And I think that, I think absolutely I'd love to drive for Michael. I'd love to drive for family. I think that that would be a huge honor, and something that my father did as well. So I think, my dad's been he's been very lucky to get to drive for AJ and Richard and Michael, as we talked about off the air. So I think continuing getting able to drive for some of those car owners would be amazing and a huge blessing.
Now, Richard, you've got a question to add?
Yeah, actually, I've got two questions. Sorry, I lied to you, Frank, when I said I had one. I've got two.
You can have two. You're allowed to.
Thank you. Sorry, putting my engineering hat on now. Sorry, trying not to bore anybody out there. And I don't know with the the series that you're involved in, and I speak to drivers who are mainly sort of stuck in one series. So the Formula One drivers and the NASCAR Cup drivers more recently. Do you do much sort of simulator work?
We have some. Yeah, we have an iRacing simulator back at home in North Carolina. So that's really good to learn as far as the turns, where the road course goes.
Yeah.
And so that is, to me, has been the biggest benefit. And at least I know, and kind of the gearing and things like that.
Sure.
Stuff that I'm not used to. And so obviously there's so many videos available on YouTube that you can watch. So many different kinds of cars. I've gotten pretty good at figuring out which cars the gear ratios match to my TCR car, so I can kind of know, okay, they're in fourth there, I should be in third there, or whatever it may be. So, you learn those things if you just put the time and the effort in. You can make some gains there.
Yeah, that was my question, because there's some guys that you deal with, and they sort of, they'll swear that simulators are the worst thing ever, and that there's no point in using them at all. That's typically some of the older drivers, should we say.
Right.
Whereas, some of the younger guys are like, oh, I'll spend, all the time, spare time in the world. I mean, when I was at with Williams F1, I know that Valtteri Bottas, you couldn't keep him out there. He was in there 7 days a week if he could be, and he massively leaned on that system. And he said it felt really realistic to him, whereas other drivers were like, oh, it doesn't feel anything. And I'm sure partly that's a mental thing. If they want it to be good, it'll be good. If they don't, it won't.
Right, absolutely. And I think that, it's what some would work for the older drivers, it's just, racing's just like anything else, right? There was, 20 years ago, computers were barely around. Now they're a part of our everyday lives. Cell phones were not around. It's just, you have to be able to adapt, and I think use all those tools to your advantages, because there's people that are going to use those tools. Drivers used to not work out. It was until Senna came along in the early 90s or in late 80s that he would, that you guys really started to get serious about their fitness and their diet. So I think that the simulators, are the same, under the same token. It's going to be guys that get on board and learn how to make them use to their advantage. It's going to be a tool for them to excel. And that doesn't mean it's going to make them better than guys that don't use the simulator, but I think it's going to help close that gap possibly if they're close. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, again, being an engineer, I'm a big believer in them. And, as you say, even if it's just a familiarization tool, and, I'm sure by sounds of things, the number of races that you're involved in and the number of different circuits you go to, it's a massive benefit. But that was sort of leads into our second question, really. And, from being involved in so many series and so many different types of car, you look at a lot of the sort of high-end motorsport these days, so the Cup Series, IndyCar, Formula One. A lot of these drivers are very restricted, either contractually or through their own desire not to be involved in other series. I mean, you go back to the 60s and 70s when you had guys like Jim Clark and Graham Hill. I mean, they'd race their bikes from the to back to the hotel every night. They'd race anything that could move. Do you think that it's maybe detrimental to motorsport now that we're not seeing the guys in as many different environments? You look what Fernando Alonso did last year when he went to Indy. That was a huge boost for the viewership of the IndyCar racing in Europe. And, of course, he's now doing the WEC Championship and doing Le Mans. Again, I'm sure that'll have a massive benefit.
No, I think that's a great question. I think absolutely it is. I think, I understand the way that motorsports has gone. Back in those days, it was, hop in a car and drive it, and there was not as many, there was owners that didn't have sponsors, or if they did have a sponsor, it didn't matter who was driving it, but they become, sponsors become so synonymous with the guys that are driving it. You think of DuPont, you think of Jeff Gordon, you think of Lowe's, you think of Jimmy Johnson. So, for them to get hurt or do something else, it makes it difficult for a partner to get, or a sponsor to get involved. But I think overall, it does hurt the motorsports, because I think they don't create these mega stars anymore. As far as, like you talked about the Jim Clarks, the Graham Hills, the Marios, the Foyts, those people that they would show up, they would go run DeCoin. Mario would run DeCoin in a Silver Crown car, and then he would go run the Formula 5000 race. Yeah. And he would fly back and forth and do that. And so it creates these people that are, and it creates this fan base as well, that guys that are watching the Formula One race are now paying attention to what's happening in the Silver Crown race, because they saw Mario win in Monza, and they want to see what he's going to do at Springfield on the mile. And then you see the people in the Springfield mile going, man, what's this spa all about? I need to figure out, a spa, do you mean the one I go to and get, no, it's a racetrack, and they're in a Formula One car, so it just creates this breed, it creates these fans that allow them to go across different, and it gets people exposed to these different forms of motorsports. I told somebody a couple of weeks ago that I think that there are sports car fans, that only know sprint car racing. And I think that if you can get them to watch a sports car race, they'll think maybe this is really cool. This is really interesting. And I'd like to go to one of these instead of spending my money on a ball and stick sport. Because the way I look at it is motorsports needs to work together. NHRA, NASCAR, IndyCar. Those are not. It's not NASCAR versus IndyCar versus NHRA versus short track racing. They all are together. It's all of them versus the NFL, the NBA, MLB, NHL, whatever it may be, because, we're all in this for the good of motorsports in general, and I want to see them all succeed, whether it be drag racing or rallying or IndyCars, cup cars. Doesn't need to be this division, and I think that Fernando helped bridge that gap, and so I'd love to see somebody else do that, and I'd like to see that happen more often. I think it's helping WEC as well. I mean, I'm paying attention to WEC because I want to see Fernando do well. I met him last year, and he came back and looked at my sprint cars, and he was asking questions and intelligent questions, and I told him whenever he wanted to drive one, I would have one ready for him, and he said no way. But who knows? The offer's there.
Yeah. No, and that's sort of interesting from a personal level. You sometimes, like, you listen to athletes playing lots of sports, and it'd be interesting to sort of ask your opinion on this. Do you find, in a way, the higher up, the sort of, for want of a better word, the motorsport pyramid you climb, it becomes less enjoyable because it's more, structured from a media and a PR point of view, or do you still feel you've got that freedom a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a, I think anything that becomes, there's more pressure, there's everything that else goes with it, that's a tough question. I think that, there's two sides to that token because there's more pressure, it's more structured, there's more money involved, there's more sponsorship involved. But on the flip side of that is when you succeed, it feels that much better. You know what I mean? If you're racing locally and beating the same people every week locally, and then you can go versus winning the Indianapolis 500, you're going to feel a lot better about winning the Indianapolis 500, obviously. So, I think it depends. One thing I have liked seeing, like especially in Formula One, to talk to you about that, it kind of got in the early 2000s. There was a lot of, there was the Schumachers, the Hakkinen, the Mika Hakkinen, Kimi Räikkönen. They were so focused and so. I'm not going to say they didn't have a personality, but they were just very much straight-faced, to the point, show up and race and try to win, and then go home.
Yep.
But now you have all these different personalities. You have Ricciardo, you have Vettel, even Hamilton's loosening up a little bit. Obviously, Alonso, he is as well, and then you have Verstappen. And then you just have this different culture that I've seen in Formula One, at least from the outsider's perspective. The press conferences, they actually smile, and after the races, the second guy actually laughs, and they. So I think that is good for motorsports, and I think that is good. And I think that goes to the trend that just because there's more pressure and more money and everything involved doesn't mean these guys aren't having a blast.
No,
and
I
think
it's interesting.
It should be fun.
It's interesting you sort of mentioned that, because a lot of what Fernando took out of running the Indy 500 last year was how much he enjoyed engaging with the fans, and how much it was it was a lot more relaxed for him, that sort of environment, even though the magnitude of the race was in many ways an equal to anything that he does during his day job, for want of a better word, but was it was that feeling of not being quite so tense. And it's interesting now that, the Liberty Group own the sport, and, maybe that's sort of, they're trying to change that culture, because I think, as you say, 10, 15 years ago, the atmosphere around the teams became almost sort of military-like. And it was, there was like a barrier between the fans and the teams, and you're almost like you're at a zoo. And you couldn't touch anybody. Whereas, as more of these drivers go out and experience these other other series that are a lot more relaxed and a lot more engaging, I think it's good for the sport. Unfortunately, a lot of them end up going to do that after their career and don't have an opportunity to come back into the Formula One paddock and say, hey guys, there's another world out there, this is really cool. So yeah, that's one of my big things where I think Formula One needs to improve, and especially for it to work in the US market, is to have a far more relaxed atmosphere. And I think it's slowly getting there with the new ownership. But when you have guys like Fernando doing what he did, I think it's fantastic for motorsport in general, because it's, as you say, they've all got to work together.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's the cool thing about short track racing is there's been times I've rolled up under red. There's been times I've crashed, and I get out of the car, and I have fans screaming at me, go back. I ran a super modified up at Oswego, and I throttle hung one night, and I crashed. And I got out of the car, and the fans came out after the fans and said, go back to where you came from. We don't want you here, yada, yada, yada. And I just gave them the thumbs up. How you doing? High five. I'll see you guys next week. Got out of the car and went back. And I came back next week. There was a red flag. I pulled it out of gear. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm in turn 4. The guys come to the stands, and go, hey, Jarett, how's the car? How you doing? And I'm going, it's just that interaction that you talk to them. You're in the car. It's lap 20, and you're going, the car's a little tight. We should be all right here. Hopefully, some of these guys, he's getting free in front of me. I can get him. So I think that interaction between the fans and drivers has to be there, because those are the interactions that fans remember forever, and those are the ones that get fans for life. I can't tell you how many times I've been told stories of, I met Mario at Springfield in 1967, and he signed my hat, and here's the hat. And, it's something that it took a minute, but it was a personal interaction with him, and that's different than anything else that they've experienced. Exactly. And I think that makes a big difference. Anyway, sorry.
And that's what I always sort of say about these, the guys. People say, these, Formula One drivers or NASCAR drivers or IndyCar drivers or whatever. And it's like, they use the bathroom the same as you or I do.
Right.
They're no different. They're human beings. They're real people. And it's a shame that, we don't get that interaction. We don't get that human side as much as we maybe should do. And it's, as I say, I think that's the big barrier that motorsport is facing, and it needs to sort of try and break that down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, another thing about motorsports, and too, is you need to do things to get these guys in the public eye, because I think one of the things, and the difference in motorsports and a lot of these other, is you can't see their faces during when they're doing what they're doing best and what they are paid to do and what they're famous for and what makes them special compared to everybody else in the room or everybody else in the world, is driving the race car. They can't see their faces. I mean, these guys, basketball players, they become synonymous because they see their face for 12-minute quarters, and even football players, they take their helmet off and you can see through their helmet. Same with NHL players and baseball players. So I think you need to even do more on that side of things to get these people to be recognizable and these brands to be built, because that pulls everybody up. As these drivers become more recognizable in the public eye, it makes it easier for them to promote and for to get fans there. And it's a cycle. It's pushing the snowball from the top of the mountain, and it just builds momentum. And pretty soon you have not that you don't have a fantastic product already, but it just creates more and more and more.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a difficult industry, isn't it? You're vying for TV time and airtime on TV, and as you say, it's to make these people recognizable. And Honda's done good with their TV commercials, and trying to bring that more into the mainstream. So hopefully, it's all going in the right direction.
Right, and you got guys like Hinchcliffe out there dancing. And Alexander Rossi and Connor Dale are out there on Amazing Race, and and on the Celebrity Family Feud, and these guys just put themselves out there too. Man, if you just look at the whole little autograph battle that Joseph Newgarden and Simon Pagenaud are having on Twitter and YouTube, it's really quite entertaining. But it really kind of humanizes the drivers as just pretty good personalities, which is something that, like I said, was lacking in Formula One for years. So, but Jarett, before we let you go, I wanted to just talk about one more thing, and that's your grandfather, Aldo Andretti, who a lot of people don't realize that Aldo was a pretty darn good race car driver himself, and he might have reached the heights that Mario had he not had some injuries early in the career. But I mean, is Aldo active with your race career? Do you guys talk often? Because he was a terror on the dirt tracks from all accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. He was he was about I would say about 10 minutes from me here in Brownsburg, Indiana, and so we speak fairly often. I text him every now and again, and I was telling somebody yesterday, actually, I texted him in December. I got a response in April, and I talked to him 3 or 4 times since then. I've seen him 3 or 4 times, so he's not as great with with texting back and forth, but I go see him, and he comes to some races whenever he can, so he's still staying busy in his old age, and or getting older. I'm not going to call him old because he still stays active, but yeah, I mean, obviously, I've called him from time to time for advice on different places because when I went up to Oswego, him and Mario had been the only 2 people in our family that had raced there, and so he gave me some advice there. It was in the 60s. He made some interesting points that I took up there with me. So he stays as active as he can. He comes to as many races. He'll come to the shop and actually I had him in the shop not too long ago, and I was peeling decals off the car, and he goes, "Well, Give me that heat gun, and I'll do the other side." So he was there peeling decals off the car, so I could get it revinyled. So he's like I said, he's into it, and he loves racing as much now as he did when he was came to the United States and was 16 years old, and building a modified for him and Mario to go out to Nazareth in.
Man, that's incredible. So now, before we let you go, Jarett, because I know you got a pizza on the way, would you? I hope your pizza's not sitting there getting cold. But, gosh, we sure have enjoyed talking to you. But I want you to just let our listeners know where they can find you on social media, where we can follow you, any events you want to plug. I know you've got like a meet and greet coming up with where you're going to be side by side with Michael's IndyCar drivers.
Yeah, we're going to there's going to be a Napa store here in Indianapolis from 12 to 2 tomorrow. And they're gonna have the 4 IndyCar drivers. I'm gonna have my wing sprint car there. I'm gonna be I'll be by the sprint car talking to people about it, and then come by and stop by and say hello, and I'd love to talk to you. And otherwise, you can find me on social media at Jarett Andretti Racing for Facebook, Andretti Autosport Short Track for Facebook, and then at Jarett Andretti Twitter and at Jarett Andretti Instagram. So I keep it simple. Make sure I don't forget my own accounts. So if you type in Jarett Andretti, it should come up. And so follow me there, and you can ask questions. I try to be as responsive as I can, and kind of try to engage as much as I can.
Right, and that's Jarett Andretti with 1 R and 2 T's.
Just like the last name. Yep.
Exactly, yep. So, Jarett, I wish you the best of luck. Hopefully, maybe later in the season, you'll come back on the show. Tell us about your first Pirelli World Cup win that's going to come at Watkins Glen. Hey, we can be optimistic. So, any final thoughts before we let you go enjoy your pizza and get some rest?
No, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was fun, and you know how to get a hold of me, and love to do it again.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Subaru.com.
Enter website.